based on Jira, epics and user stories. And we take an example from the Uptrust Counseling web application, right? So there are different ways you can create user stories. You can come to this create button here at the top and click on create, and you see the tab here for you to create, right? Or you can basically decide to get into the project. Once you click the project, now you are into the project board. So it is see things like roadmap. If there's a product owner can upload the product roadmap. See things like backlog. Backlog is like a list of items of what needs to be built. So backlogs are mostly populated with user stories of what needs to be built, right? Then we see the project board, right? Where we see what are we to do, what is in progress, and what has been completed, which is this done, right? So if we have a user stories that we need to deliver in the other sprint, let's say in the next sprint, we're in sprint 1 now, I'm going to deliver a user story in sprint 2. That user story will come to this to do. Now, the user story that we are currently implementing will come to in progress, or the tasks or items we are currently implementing will come to in progress. And the one that we have completed will come to done. That basically is how this flows. These other ones, don't bother yourself about them at the moment. So, as I said, there are different ways you can create user stories and epics on Jira. I've talked about the fact you can come from this side and click on create. You can click on the backlog and then come here and you see the ability for you to create. Now, I'm going to explain in Jira, items or user stories or epics or whatever are called issues, right? So let's come from here and create from here, right? So you see here, they say create issue. Once I click on this, I'll give a title of that issue, what needs to be done. I can come from here and do it, or I come here and I click on create. Now, when I click here on create, I'll need to select the issue type. If there are different projects, I can come here and select the project I want to create that issue for. Now, there are different issue types. We have a user story, which is already pre-selected. We have a task. A task is like something that needs to be done. Most times developers create tasks. A task is used to deliver a user story, right? Then we have bug. Bug is much more concerned to the tester, the software tester, the QA. So if when testing the system, they realize that there's a bug, then they will create a bug, like an error. Let's say, for instance, we said part of the requirement that you have written as a BA is that customers should only sign up using their email address and password, and their password must be alphanumeric with no special character. And then the software tester tries to test and realize that when you don't do alphanumeric, when you omit that alphanumeric, you are still allowed to create an account, and there's a bug, there's an error. So the tester will create this bug, notify the developer, and developer will fix. Then we have the epic. I know Ayomiko has we've actually spent time to teach people what epic and user stories are. Epics are like the large chunk of the work which we can't deliver at a go, but we need to break them down into what user stories. So we can consider an epic to be a larger user story. So let me go first and create an epic, and then I call this epic. I can call this epic counselor onboarding. So this epic helps to cover the onboarding process, what needs to be done for the onboarding for a counselor, right? Now, under this epic, I'll now, let's say, a description of the epic. We'll describe what is epic. So as a counselor, I want to be able to onboard on the e-counseling web app so that I can have access to the have access to the system. It'll just be as simple as that. Now, if you want to assign it to somebody, and this is where it comes in. Let's say you put just basically create this user stories and you want to assign to yourself. You say, okay, let me use Sean's team. Sean say, okay, I want to assign this epic to Chinese. All Sean has to do is just to come here and click on this. You see the list of people you can assign to, and you can assign to Chinese. And once I create this, Chinese will get a notification on her mail that a task has been assigned to her. That's an issue has been assigned to her to work on, and she can pick it up and work on. So as it is, she's responsible for this piece of work at this stage. Once she finishes writing, she can now assign to the Scrum Master or to the product owner. The Scrum Master will now assign the work to the developer to work. When the developer has finished, the developer will change the state, then it will be assigned to the software tester to test. If it is successful, it will be assigned back to the product owner to close it out, or should I say to move it to done. So that is basically how the workflow of assigning and whoever should work on something goes on this, right? So these are also other information in terms of if this epic is linked to another epic or issue, we'll decide how is the relationship. Is it blocked by that particular epic? Is it a clone? Is it a duplicate of another epic or another user story? Or does it relate to another epic, or does it relate to another user story? Is it caused by, right? Is it caused by another epic that is being completed or dependent on that epic? So that basically is just a nutshell of how to create an epic, right? If you want to select the start date, you select it here, and the date you should end implementation of this epic, you also select it here. So now I've created this epic, right? I'll click on create. Now, upon creating, I can go and view the epic I've created by see this pop-up that says view issue. I'll come here and I can view the issue. Guys, view the epic. So it takes this ID. Remember, your requirements needs to be uniquely identified, and automatically Jira helps us to uniquely identify every requirement we capture. So this is UCA 1. The next issue I'll capture, whether it is an epic or user story or whatever, it goes in that chronological order. The next one will be UCA 2, UCA 3, UCA 4, UCA 5, right? So I have this. Now, you see here that says add a child issue. This child issue is more or less like you say the Jira telling you to add a user story, because Jira have identified that this is an epic. So if I click here, you see that the story have come out, like user story. So add the user story to this. We can say things like counselor sign up, right? The other one as counselor registration. Right. So I can have this here. Counselor sign up, counselor registration. So you see this was UCA 1, this UCA 2, UCA 3, right? I can choose to edit the summary here and say counselor sign up. I say sample. And I'll click on this good here. I can also come here and say this one and say it was a sample. And I'll click on good. I can change the state from to do to in progress. If I move it to this in progress and I go to the board. Okay, I've not linked my board and my backlog. I'll do that later, but let me focus on the scope of this stuff. Now, when I come to the backlog here, so these are the issues that I've created. Your epic will not appear on your backlog. What appears on the backlog is the user story, the tags, and the bug. The epics will not appear on the backlog. Rather, you see the epic here being tied to the user story, counselor onboarding, counselor onboarding. So you know the epics that you are working on, right? Now, let me now go to these user stories. I would like someone to, okay, let me not go that route, but let me just go to the user stories and then write a user story on this. To view this, I'll just click on this and then a new tab will open, which is a tab for the user story, right? Now, when the user story opens, okay, thank you for that. So I can come here. I'm basically going to teach people how I write my user stories, right? There are different ways people write user stories, but I've been written it for several years and I've been able to iterate to come up with one of the easiest way to write to limit back and friction between you and the development team and also increase communication. First thing is I go from the route to ask myself, why do we need this user story, right? So I'll say, why do we need this, right? And I'll say something like, we need to be able to allow counselors to sign up on the app so that we can verify their personal or contact information. So this is just trying to just come up with something, right? Then I'll say job story. Now, when I say my job story, watch what I'll do here. You see this place that says code snippets. That is basically what I love to use in writing my user story. I'll come here and say code snippets. So I'll say, as a counselor, right? Or I'll say as a new user. So as a counselor, I want to be able to, provide my email address and password so that I can sign up on the app, on the e-counseling app. So, sorry, Control Z. I get this, and I get this. So I have my user story, right? There are other things I can do, things like I would say precondition. I can say precondition if I want, or now all of these things I'm doing, many people don't do them on their user stories when writing on Jira. But I basically do this just to ensure that I'm so much clear in my communication to whoever is looking at my user stories. And this has helped my developers a lot. So precondition, I can give a precondition that says user must have a valid email address, right? User is on the landing page of the e-counseling app. So like my two preconditions, and I'll say user flow. I'll say user flow. User flow is user clicks on the sign up button. User enters email address. User enters password. User, I'm using so that I'll have more space. Yeah. User accepts terms and conditions. User clicks on the create accounts button. So I can come here, holding this, come here, make this like this, highlight this just to show that it's a button. Right. So I don't know if you have any question up onto this extent, or if it is clear to you up onto this extent. You guys are quiet.
Yeah, it is.
Clear.
Is it clear to us?
Yeah, it is.
So I can say things like my post condition, and my post condition could be things like verify email, user verify email address. That could be my post condition. So user will need to verify their email address. I believe you all see that whenever we are creating accounts, once you put your email address, you have to tell that we've sent a link to your email. You need to verify your email, right? Now, the last piece to it is where I have my acceptance criteria. Now, acceptance criteria could be very tricky to write, but there's what I call cheat sheet, easier way to actually write acceptance criteria. The easiest way, I know Ayomiko we've taught you guys, given that, right, which is the scenario based, and then we have the rule based, right? Scenario based, given that I'm on the sign up page. When I enter my email address and password in the input field and click on and accepted the terms and condition and clicked on the create account button, then my account should be created and I should be required to verify my email address. That is a scenario based. Let me write it here. Let's see. Given that I am on the sign up page, right? When I enter my email address, email address and password, and accept the terms and conditions and click on the create accounts button, then my accounts should be created. So this basically is a typical example of what we call the the scenario-based acceptance criteria. It's called the scenario-based acceptance criteria, right?
That's
But sorry?
Gherkin syntax, right?
Yes, Gherkin syntax, yeah. The Gherkin syntax. So, which is the scenario-based acceptance criteria. But how I basically write people write theirs. You can use scenario-based or rule-based, right? But I prefer to use the rule-based in writing my own. Now, and in writing my rule-based, to ensure that I'm able to capture everything that I need to capture in my acceptance criteria, I divide my acceptance criteria into two aspects. Number one, happy path. And number two, unhappy path. Now, what do I mean by happy path? Happy path means if everything goes on successfully. So happy path is that customer enters the right email formats, customer enters the right password formats, customer accepts terms and condition, and then customer clicks on create accounts, and then they get that email verification link. That is happy path. Everyone is happy, right? No issues. But unhappy part, or you can call it error or negative part, could be customer entered the correct email address, but the customer did not enter the correct password. Or customer enter correct email address, enter the correct password format, but did not tick the terms and conditions button to sign up. Do you understand? So these are like the unhappy part. So I'm catering for the positive situation and also the negative situation. What this does is it will help the software tester, that is the QA, when they're writing their test cases, they will know what kind of negative scenarios should I be testing against. Yeah, although they ideally should know the negative scenarios, but you are furthermore trying to help them understand the various negative scenarios you want them to test. Perhaps if they did not include that as part of their test scenarios. Do you understand? So that's why I said how I write my user stories and acceptance criteria. I try much as possible to communicate all of the information that is necessary for my team members so that there will be as little to no back and forth for me needed to do those clarification for them when they start implementing. So starting with happy path is still under acceptance criteria. And that is the way I write my acceptance criteria, by the way. So under happy path, I'll say must ensure that the user must ensure that the email address follows the format of your mail at hi at your mail.com, right? Must ensure that the email address follow this format. Must ensure that the password has I must ensure that the password has the following let me say has meets let me say meets, let's use what satisfies the following conditions. Minimum of 6 characters, maximum of 12 characters, must be alphanumeric, must have at least one uppercase, must have at least one lowercase, must have at least one number. Right. So these are the conditions for that must be satisfied for the password. Password must be a minimum of 6 characters and maximum of 12 characters. That means you can have 6-character password, 7-character password, 8-character, 9, 10, 11, and 12. We can't have 5-character or 4-character or 3 or 2-character password. Neither can we have 13-character password or 14-character password or 15 and so forth, right? That's what this says. This one says the password must be alphanumeric. That means it must have alphabets and numbers, right? Password must have at least one uppercase. That means there should be at least one uppercase, a capital letter. You can have 2 or 3 or 5, right? But at least one uppercase. I must have at least one lowercase. That means even though if you have a 6-character password, you can end up having 4 uppercase, 1 lowercase, and 1 number. It satisfies it. You can also end up having 4 lowercase, one uppercase, and one number. You can also end up having 4 numbers, one lowercase and one uppercase. As long as it satisfies this criteria, we accept the password, right? Now, we continue and say, if you remember, I'm writing it based on this. So you can also say, must ensure that when the user clicks on the sign up button, that the create account page is loaded or appears. Must ensure that the user must ensure that the terms and conditions must ensure that the checkbox for the terms and conditions is ticked by the customer before the create accounts button can be enabled. So it means if you have not ticked that accept text terms and conditions checkbox, we shouldn't, the create account button should be grayed out. That it should be inactive. It shouldn't be enabled, it should be disabled, right? We can use checkbox here. You can also use radio button. So I'll explain to people what a radio button is. Now, there are some websites. Let me open a website. Let me open LinkedIn. Oh no, this is signing me in. Okay. So let's say we go to join LinkedIn now, right? So ideally, there's no text, but it just tells you agree and join. It means by clicking on this button, you have automatically agreed to the user agreements, privacy policy, and cookie policy of LinkedIn. Let's check Facebook. If we can, I'm trying to show you something with respect to checkbox and radio button. I want to see if Facebook has a checkbox or radio button. So, okay, Facebook also says by clicking on this, you agree. So it means once you click on sign up button, you agree to it and you go for which platform can we check? Let's check Amazon. Amazon could help. So let me go to, where can I sign in? Okay, sign in. New customer start here. Let's see if Amazon has that. So Amazon also says by creating an account, you agree to Amazon terms and conditions. So it basically means, now you see that 6 characters. So password, they're telling you here that password must have at least 6 characters, right? So it means that the new frame or the new way technology goes now is that instead of telling customers to tick checkbox, they just inform them as an information that once you click on this continue, you have automatically accepted terms and conditions. So you can also frame your own acceptance criteria that way and says we must ensure that customer, or we must ensure, if I'm to what we've seen on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Amazon, if I'm to represent it in acceptance criteria, I will say must ensure that we inform the customer with we must ensure that we display an information below, it can be below or on top, below the create account button to inform the customer that they will automatically accept terms and conditions when they click the create account button. I can come further and say the information displayed should be, and I'll say by clicking. So let me just get an example. Let me get a sample of that instead of writing a long text. So I'll just come here and copy this, Control C, come here and paste. So then I have this. Then I come here, just highlight this to show you it's a button. So what's this requirement that is here? I've basically represented it with this acceptance criteria. So if developers are building, they know that, okay, this needs to be catered for. I can say, since this is an information, let me give it a form of a special character, or let me display it in a different way so that customers, whoever is implementing is aware of it. I can say, let me make this maybe a purple color to see this as information, or I might choose to make it bolder, but italicize it. And whoever is implementing knows that this is an information that needs to be displayed to the customer. So this is just an example of happy path. There are several happy paths, right? Another happy path to this would be must ensure that when the customer, so when the user, I'm used to the word customer. Hope I don't put customer anywhere here. Okay, when the user has satisfied all the criteria stated above, was assured that if the user has satisfied the criteria stated above, when the user clicks on the create account button, that the system or application sends a verification link to the user's email address, requesting the user to click to verify email. Sorry, I'm trying to type fast. And for this, you can also say must ensure that a new page is displayed to notify a customer of this action. The page should have the information. Please check your email. Okay, let me see. We have sent you a mail in your, you have sent a mail to your email. Please follow the link to verify your email before you can continue. So this is another information that we're passing across, and I just represent it this way. So this is just The acceptance criteria can go on and on and on, and we kind of explain all of that. Then we have the unhappy path, right? We have the unhappy path. For the unhappy path, I'll just give a brief example of an unhappy path. A good example is where we say must ensure that if the customer, I'm used to customer, if the user entered a wrong email formats, or if the customer enters, let me not say it wrong, enters an email format different from what has been stated above. Okay, must ensure that, let me come here and say that we display an error message to the user when the user enters an incorrect or enters an email format different from what has been stated above. The error message should say you have entered a wrong email format. Please ensure your email format is you@yourmail.com. You@yourmail.com. And I'll say the error message should appear below the email address input form with a red color, font color. Okay, an example is, let me see if LinkedIn has it. So if I say they search, enter my email address and I say genesis.com. So this is it. Please enter a valid email address. So this is a red color. This information appearing below the input form for email address, but it has a red color, which is what I've just stated here. The only difference is that the message, as I've said, it should display is different from the message that LinkedIn is displaying, but it's the same information that passing across, but the message is different. So it all depends on how you want to word your message or how you want to represent your message. But the fact is that you're communicating the same thing to your stakeholder. So this is an example of an unhappy path. You also do that for password. You also do that for when the what do you call it now? When the terms and conditions were not accepted and all of that. So when you're done writing, you come here and you click on save. And this is a sample of a user story that I have written. So you can try out your hand. I've granted you guys access to the Jira board. Just today, spend time to just play around user stories. As I've explained to you guys today, I know it's fresh in your mind, but spend time to play around so you can, become at least a master of what you've learned today prior to when you start writing for your projects next week. So please try as much as possible to practice this. I don't know if you have any question, anyone. Is there any question, or we pretty much understood what I've just written now or what I've done? Can you still hear me?
So how should I digest this?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
Maybe we'll start trying it out because there's a lot of information that's come through now in a short time.
Yeah, but I just want to know if I know we've done user stories in the class, right?
It was more like defined. I don't know. I don't think it was a practical or whether there were examples or just defined user stories and talked about that. So
Okay, so thankfully this show and tell session was able to hold, and you can just take a look at it all over again. Listen to the class. I'll share a link to this recording. You can listen and listen and listen, because in the next 3 to 4 weeks, you guys are going to be writing user stories and acceptance criteria. So all of those features that you have listed out for the various solutions you're working on, you're going to write their user stories and acceptance criteria. And that is what the developer is going to use to build out the solution. Without user stories and acceptance criteria going along with the design, there's nothing the developer will be able to build.
So, okay. For each of the features, right? Each of the main functions.
Each of everything.
Okay. Genesis.